Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday. Hard to believe we are almost in September for those here in the US. Monday, we got an extra day, so that's nice. We do anything special, Chip, on that day?
Uh, well, let's see. For this is going to be an interesting Labor Day weekend for us. We are hosting a wedding at our Airbnb, which is kind of impromptu, like we're not a wedding venue, but we have this person that rented it and then kind of followed up a week later with, well, I really want to have a small wedding. We're like, how small is small? Because it needs to be really small. So that's the big adventure for us this weekend. Um,
Are you
fit
officiating? Like,
N
chop
no,
chip or
definitely
anything like
not.
that?
Definitely not. If I did, I would be doing it in my SaaS Alerts t-shirt.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, or maybe the blue one that just says cover your SaaS very prominently on the front. I think that would be appropriate for a wedding official.
Yeah,
No, we're not.
they don't have enough. If they don't have enough people, there, Chip, we could bring every kind of virtually in with a bunch of SaaS Alerts shirts for them, and you know, make it seem like a real wedding.
We could. I suppose that that could be a new thing, like a SaaS Alerts themed wedding at the Wood Duck B&B. But we'll see.
What
We'll
time do
see how
we
this
have to
goes.
be there?
I don't even know. The bride and her bridesmaids are arriving this afternoon, and they're all excited about it and gonna be planning out their lighting and all that kind of stuff. And look, we're mostly staying out of this. My wife is like, "You're crazy that you even accepted these people. Like, you're you're out of your mind." So, my role was to make sure the lawn was trimmed up nicely, and yeah, that's kind of where it ends. They got to figure everything else out for themselves.
All right. Yeah, just send Enrique the address so he can show up in the RV, and it'll be a big party.
There you go. Yeah, Enrique, I think you have about 48 hours to do all that traveling, so you
Good. I
better get
just
on
got
it.
my generator repaired, so ready to roll.
All right. Well, welcome everybody again, and let's get things off. Chip, any exciting wins for you this week before we go to the greater community?
Um, I guess the biggest win that I've felt since our last call is actually around how much AI transformation is going inside Kaseya in general. I'm going to toot Liron's horn for a second here and make the statement that he is really leading the hands on the tools AI revolution inside Kaseya, and a lot of people are starting to notice. And I think he is, at least in terms of engineering tools and what can be done on the engineering side to enhance productivity and quality, product security, all of those things. Our team is leading the way, and Liron is leading our team. And the big win here is that, in the past week or so, a bunch of people inside of this big broader organization have picked up on that theme and are, essentially asking, for Liron, the guru, to become their teacher, which
Wow,
is, quite a statement.
that
So
is. Well,
I consider that a huge win.
you do know, Chip, the L in LLM is for Leron. It's not large.
Liron's language model. I like it.
Yeah. Congrats, Leron. What are they coming in and asking you these days? Like what seems to be the theme they need your expertise in, and congrats on being recognized.
Thank you. Um, I think it's just the basics and the fundamentals. And for us, in the speech that I give, right, is that to me, AI and LLMs are kind of where computers were in the 60s, which is a printout of zeros and ones, which are useless to most people. And people expect an iPhone, and we forget the history of technology adoption and the way that all of that works. People expect an iPhone, they get the zeros and ones, they start punching things into it, they don't get the expected outcome, and they're like, this thing sucks, or it's broken, or it's not working. And if you guys are reading what I'm reading, which is some people are now expecting a bubble, an AI bubble to burst, and I think a lot of that is because the media is all looking for interesting things to write about and say, and people are doing really interesting things with AI, but the reality is most of us are working with very mature code bases that are very challenging to work with. So just kind of understand where we are with AI. And the other big message that I'm sending to people is don't focus on prompt engineering, focus on context engineering and learn what that means and learn how to manage the context instead. And I think in the future, and many people have said this, we're all managing multiple agents, and the type of force multipliers that we've seen, albeit in controlled experiments, is 30x productivity. And I think it's unrealistic to expect that outside of a controlled or net new sort of project. But I do fully expect and want and desire to see a 2 to 7x productivity from developers. And we're now thinking about how do we effectively measure this on an ongoing basis.
This is such a great segue to what I have today, Leron. I'm really glad that Chip brought this up. And when we get to this segment, I'd really like to lean on you. So really cool. How about some wins out in the SaaS Alerts world? Corey, I think there's a win there for you that things are calming down. No, no rest for the weary.
No?
No, I made the mistake of saying it was calming down because it was for a few days, and I've already been responding to three incidents this morning, so that's why I'm like I'm on here to relax and be in my happy place.
We are the yeah, we are literally the melatonin.
The win is Akira is spotlighting more visibility to misconfigurations, but is that really a win? So yeah.
Well, it's a win in that it's putting the responsibility where it belongs. And then that leads for people to begin to see what they need to do to take responsibility. So maybe that's a win.
That's true.
You know, it's a longer term reduction in pain. It's not instant, but it's a win.
True. Others out there? Anybody got
I have a question.
Yeah.
This last week we had a rash of these kind of like spam that are using the Microsoft direct gizmos that calendars use for calendar reminders. They're bypassing the spam filters. Just wondering if anybody else had such a strange thing happening. I don't know if this is something that's outside of what SaaS Alerts can deal with.
You mean
Like
the
it's mostly inside? Yeah.
just to clarify, Rich, do you mean the calendar invites that people get?
Yeah, they get calendar invites that are have a bad payload.
So you saw a payload with these? Tell us about that, because Chip, you and I have historically just seen, it be a calendar invite and then trying to get you to do something and interact from a social engineering perspective. You've seen an actual payload with these?
Yeah, two of them. One of them actually landed on my own machine after investigating it on a client. The same exact email reminder that the client got. It actually appeared in my email too, which is kind of weird. And it appears as a reminder for a meeting with a downloadable attachment. In one case, it was a document to review or something like that. Another client had what appeared to be an email, but there was no trace of it in the email trace, and there was no trace of it in the spam filter. But it looked to her like an email with a HTML document called to do. And when I exploded it in a sandbox, it was going off to a Linux machine to get credentials, just the old Microsoft credentials. So we got help with the Proofpoint people to kind of built in some rules in Microsoft Exchange rules to kind of catch some of these things. We're still testing it right now, but the mechanism, it's using a mechanism inside Microsoft direct send or something like that too.
Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago, Andrew.
Is this back to direct send? Sujit said he's been dealing with this. That's interesting. This is the same direct send feature, Chip, that you feel this is coming from?
Yeah, because it can include attachments. So when you can get a calendar invite now in, well, this has been not just now, for a long time, in Outlook or in Teams, because they basically show up from the same data set that includes attachments for review, especially if your company's using Copilot. Copilot will automatically attach documents that's relevant to the people that are in the meeting for review. So, I've gotten used to that as a feature, if you will, of Copilot. If I have a meeting with Andrew Morgan coming up and you and I have had several documents we've been keeping back and forth there, Copilot will automatically throw that as an attachment in the calendar invite for me to have to review before our discussion. Teams links coming, from any email address at all. Somebody can fake a Teams link and stick it in there, which would lead to a direct um, token harvesting approach, attacker in the middle. So definitely calendars are really not much different than email in terms of the susceptibility to the interaction with live links that people can run down a rabbit hole and get in trouble with.
Yeah, that's fair. Sujit, you want to share what you've been experiencing?
Yeah, same boat as Rich there. We started seeing these all of a sudden last couple of weeks. I had one land right in my inbox, and I tried to report it via Graphis, and it just gave me an error, said it didn't exist. So I opened a case with Graphis support, and I guess they've realized this is an edge case for them as well. Due to the length of characters in the sender address, it just wasn't able to analyze it. So they're working on a fix so that these can get assessed and flagged correctly going forward. But I've had to just set up transport rules in place for people with direct send to kind of lock it down to just their own domain. So if it's coming from these other instances where people have it set to default where it's just open, we can at least block them from getting in. We've had everything from phishing emails to malicious attachments. Same thing with the calendar invites. There's just been a big slew of them coming in. I guess some genius at Microsoft thought this was a great idea, but clearly not the right approach in today's day and age. So we're revisiting like SMTP more often, kind of shutting that down. People who really need it, we're getting third-party services. Some of these are bouncing off SMTP as well with the way they send, and then others are fax and others are attachments. So definitely Funkadelic. I do have some, I'll post it here in the chat. This is from a dev I was working with at Microsoft for anyone who just kind of wants to see a little bit more of what this was about and some of the ways you can go about locking it down.
All right, thanks.
Chip, did we get anywhere with direct send? We talked about this, like you said, probably, 2 months ago, give or take now, when the rash of these came out. I know you guys were.
Yeah, I do not know where we stand. I know we have I don't think it's on production yet, but we have some Fortify rules coming in place. Oh, it is already, Anthony?
Yeah. Jason
Awesome.
brought that to market about a week or 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks now. In any case, take a look in Fortify, search for direct send. If you want to block that, it's a couple mouse clicks.
Oh, cool. Can we show that later, potentially, Anthony?
Sure.
Cool.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Just out of curiosity, Anthony, does that also impact the direct send, like the auto task integration with PSA ticketing and such? Or is this like direct send for anonymous? I'll read into it.
That is a great question. I don't know. I've pointed this out to a lot of partners in the last couple of weeks, and I haven't had any pushback that, oh, this broke something else. So we'd have to get with Jason, make sure he understands that there might be some complications there. But so far, knock wood, no complaints.
Yeah, so Jika, I don't think it's going to impact SaaS Alerts sending events into Autotask. That's a direct, not a direct send is in an email. That's a direct API integration between the two products. So it's not going to get in the way of that. Well, it's not for SaaS
Alerts. This is directly for Autotask into R365. So like when we do ticket updates and stuff, they have some kind of direct send configuration. When I turned off direct send last night for our org, they started getting bounce backs from Autotask when they would send updates saying direct send was disabled. I didn't even realize it used that. until I had kind of just blindly turned it on to see what broke. So it
Yeah.
was just an interesting thing I came across.
That's good info. We'll have to reach out to the Autotask team. And Anthony, maybe we should ask Jason to come on next week and just describe exactly what that Fortify control does, and if he can add parameters in there that allow direct sends from specific organizations, or just how finely tuned we can control that Fortify.
It's a great idea. Anybody who hasn't tripped across Jason, he's the smartest developer I've ever met. He's fantastic. He's a great guy.
Hey, let's check Jason's availability before we do anything else.
We'll
Okay.
just tackle him, Leron.
Who's to do is that? Just so we can check.
I'll
that
look into
box.
it.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Leland.
I'll ask Amanda to look into it rather.
Okay. All right. I'm just gonna make a note about that real quick. So we'll do Jason. Oops. So I'll ask Amanda. Okay. Perfect. Others? Any other thoughts or wins?
Wins, failures, observations.
No. Okay. Amanda, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. I'll let you take over.
All right. All right. So you can see scheduled reports.
Yes.
Okay. So the enhancement, it will be released tomorrow morning. What happens now inside of scheduled reports, if you were to pick a report that requires an organization to be attached with it, associated with it, so it's not a partner level report. You used to only be able to select one organization. Now you can multi-select, so you can pick everything from your list if you want to send them on the same frequency. So you don't have to create a separate schedule for each organization. You just have to have the schedule per the report and then attach the organizations and set it to the frequency that you want. And real quickly, the direct send, I will speak to Jason, but as Anthony mentioned, it is already here in Fortify. So if you come to your actions and you type in direct send, you're going to see there's a reject direct send. If you click the light bulb and you come to the description tab, it gives you exactly what this is doing. It gives you a link for more information, etc. But I will have Jason come on so he can answer any additional questions next week if he's available.
Really cool.
And that's it for my side this week.
Amanda, that's big news. You guys should do a blog on that or something, Chip, from the marketing side. Like talk about that attack and do some kind of marketing.
Good idea, Andrew.
I mean, I know that's not your area. I'm just saying that the hopefully are bubbling up into the product team. I mean, that's from product to product marketing or something. I mean, I don't know of anybody else addressing it.
Yeah, maybe we'll rely on some of the crew here who brought it up and experienced it directly, and we can have you guys tested it and offer enhancements and then take it out as a marketing piece, crediting some of our MSPs.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can do it right here, Ben, because you're one of the mavens. Right. Even though
What is this?
So this is an event I'm doing with, although it says September 2nd, which is wrong. It should have been September 5th. We're bumping this to September 12th, where we're going to bring on, I'm going to moderate Kelvin, Nick, Ben, and Louis Berry, four folks that I would consider, from really understanding the Microsoft Graph, M365, some of the best in the business. So we're going to look at all different facets of securing and dealing with M365 at scale on the 12th. So there's a event out there on my LinkedIn. I can put it in there. The date's going to change though. So I'll get that.
Enrique.
So Chip, speaking of renting out your place, I didn't investigate this further, but I thought it was interesting because I sent it to you. Does anybody know, Chip and I were going back and forth. So basically I'm going to put the article in chat. Does anybody know, does Booking do like an Airbnb type service? Yes, no? No.
I do
Okay.
not.
So let's assume they do, because this is what the article is insinuating, that there's a new phishing campaign out there for people that are, working through Booking, and then, they get a complaint and like, our wedding was muy, no bueno. Mr. Buck, please click on this link to see our review. And, the ruse continues from there. So, interesting, interesting new approach. Certainly if it was in Airbnb, I think it would be a lot more effective, Chip, because Airbnb is massive.
Yep.
But it was more so to set the context of, for somebody that is, renting out their place and would be concerned about, what kind of feedback they're getting from their customers, et cetera, et cetera. I thought it was a pretty decent way to social engineer, Chip. What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, somebody in chat made the comment that Booking.com does do a short-term rental
Oh, okay.
program, so this could definitely be directed at individuals, not just hotels. Yeah, look, I think it's more of the same, in the sense that really any kind of service that anyone subscribes to, whether it's a business-to-business application like we all do with Office 365 or Google Workspace, your bank, and now this, it's all about credential harvesting no matter what. When you picked this off the article, Andrew, the underlying article, did they identify where in this particular phishing campaign the danger was? What, like, it is the verification here link, the unresolved complaint links? Because the one thing that jumped out at me when you sent this to me is that the Booking.com link itself
It's real.
looks quite real. So, I
But
wonder how this attack progresses, and where is, the danger piece, if it's under that here URL
That's
versus the booking.
so, Chip, I thought the exact same thing when I saw this, but this is an email, which means I can make it display like this, but in the
That's true.
HTML itself,
Yep,
right?
yep,
I
yep.
can make it look
Yeah, that can
different.
be the link text, and the actual link itself is something completely different. You'd have to mouse over it to look at
right.
that, or if you do click on it, you'd have to look carefully at the URL bar.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Leron, because the domain does look valid. So it could get a lot of people to just go, oh, that's valid. So that's probably what it is what Leron called out. But
Yep.
anyway, just wanted to share that one with you. I wanted to revisit Coinbase real quick, Chip, because we were impressed with how the CEO and the company responded to this breach. If you recall, very transparent. They told the threat actor to go pound, what, and instead offered $20 million to whoever could get to the threat actor, and they could, get an arrest. As it turns out, what seems to have happened in this is that this is being attributed now to workers, outsourced workers, being brought, which is pretty fascinating, scary and fascinating, because so many of these large organizations, right, use call centers with third-party people, right? And so, the CSO or chief security officer of Coinbase talks about how, this is something that he never has seen. And then, but now, if you're running an organization of this size and scale, recommend doing red teaming in this area, which to me makes sense if you're at a Coinbase's size and scale. So just wanted to bring this back up because we talked about their being an exemplar and how they approached it and transparency, but interesting to what's coming out after the fact.
Yeah, and remaining transparent, number one, which is what we love to see. But it certainly is a shot across the bow for any company that's using offshore labor. I mean, it's probably possible to bribe almost anyone who doesn't, have 100% integrity. It's just a matter of how much money you have to spend, and the matter of how much money you have to spend is very um, influenced by local economic factors. And to bribe someone in India in Western dollars and U.S. dollars, may be a whole lot cheaper than bribing somebody in the United States or Canada or Western Europe. So it brings up an interesting, maybe philosophical and also moral consideration and debate about, what this really means, how easy it is to bribe someone. Do outsourced workers have the same commitment and stakes in the game as people who are part of a company or, vested stock ownership and options in a startup or even a company the size of Kaseya? It's an interesting new subtopic that I think we all have to consider on the security side.
Yeah, I'm just curious from y'all's standpoint out there as MSPs, do you guys do any outsourcing, third-party knock, SOC, where or help desk where you think about this kind of stuff that on people that might have admin credentials or things, access to your systems? It is obviously one of the big call outs in CMMC chip that, offshore, and that doesn't mean that those local parties couldn't still be 1099s, but it is interesting. Let's see. Oh, yeah, good points, and Sujit. Okay. So Liron, this is where I'm going to come back to you if I could, bud. Both so there's this MIT article that I'll put in chat for everybody, or I shouldn't say article, study. Have you seen this, Liron?
95% fail.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I've seen this.
This is really fascinating. We'll get into the meat of it, Liron, right away, but it's interesting what isn't failing, and it's why I think, if I could call on you to, when you look at technology and coding, and obviously what threat actors are not failing. But here's I highlighted a lot of this first part, and I'll just try to hit the highlights. But it basically said that the report uncovered that basically 95% of organizations are getting no return on their Gen AI investments, and that only 5% are really seeing some meaningful P&L impact. There's going to be a paradox coming up here that we'll go more into about how personal tools like Copilot and ChatGPT are winning the game in essence of the employee and how they're doing their work, but corporate initiatives on the margin are staggeringly failing. And they talk about that there's only 2 out of 8 sectors that are seeing meaningful structural change. And even though this graph didn't do a good job of it, Liron, because I don't know why, but they left off, I'll jump here. They show media and telecom, but here's where the 8 exist. But, when you look down professional services, healthcare, pharma, consumer, blah, 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 basically no meaningful. But why is it that, for someone like you, Liron, that is dealing with code day in and day out, why is why is this the area where we can see meaningful structural change? Why is versus these other areas?
I think it's because people who work in technology are, if you think of the technology adoption curve where you have innovators, early adopters, then you have the chasm, if you've
Yep.
read Crossing the Chasm, and then you have the early majority. We're very much operating to the left of this curve. And in my opinion, you have a lot more innovator types working on the technology side of the house, because when whatever new thing comes out with technology, a portion of our dev team is just going to go and they're just going to play with it because that's just the type of people they are. And if you look at some of these other things, they're a little bit slower to move, a little bit less likely to embrace new technology. And in the fields of healthcare and pharma, where it's significantly more acceptable to say, well, we've always done it this way, and that's because people's lives are on the line. So the appetite for risk is significantly reduced. So I think it's a combination of those two things.
Interesting. Chip, any take on from your side on that?
Yeah, a couple. First off, I posted in the chat for everyone if they care to dig into it. I listened to a very interesting analysis of this article that has a slightly different viewpoint. Um, and I'll just leave that out there for everybody to absorb as they want. But I think the key takeaway is that, as Leron said earlier, we are very much in the stone age of what AI is going to become in terms of how it impacts and influences um, everyone's business role, everyone's role in as a white collar knowledge worker in a business setting. There's so much going on. It's not just engineering and software development. It's a whole lot more than that. And the overall the the stage that we're in right now is most executive leadership has not yet learned how to define what their actual goals are. So it's kind of easy to make the statement that AI adoption is failing or AI efforts are failing, pilots are failing at 95% of companies because they're not well defined to begin with. Um, One of the things that I did not consider before, listening to that particular podcast, and it's one I follow for AI stuff all the time, was that there's a reluctance to include training across, the knowledge worker workforce and in most businesses around AI because it's all still so undefined that nobody really knows what to train with or how to train. So you can almost think of this. I don't, most of you are probably not old enough to remember this. Maybe you are, Andrew. Um, in the mid 1990s through the early 2000s, um, there was a company out there called ExecuTrain, and they had a whole bunch of offshoots that were in a similar model, but they were very successful because they were kind of the first. And they were training people like wildfire on Microsoft Office because it was so new that most people didn't know how to use it. Early adopters got into it right away, right? There were guys that understood the notion of spreadsheets and tables, and they picked that up from computer science classes and just doing tables manually and on graph sheets, that kind of stuff. So it all translated, but the early adopters got it quickly, and the mainstream of knowledge workers needed training, and there was a fortune to be made in the training, but it took a long time for businesses to realize, oh my God, we can't just go out and license this stuff and expect that we're going to get productivity gains out of it. You actually have to teach people how to use it. Most people are not going to put the time in to teach themselves. And I absolutely think that that's a key consideration of where we're at with the success of AI adoption and AI products inside of most businesses in the US is that training piece is really lacking right now. Part of the reasons it's lacking is because, and I know Leron can vouch for this, the the pace of change inside the ecosystem of AI tools and products, it moves dramatically from one week to the next. There's constant leapfrogging going on the frontier LLM models. There are new tools being introduced by new startups almost every day. But certainly, if you miss a week's worth of news, you're going to miss something really relevant that it becomes very important. So it's hard for businesses to decide okay, well, what are we going to select? You know, is it going to be ChatGPT? Is it going to be OpenAI? Is it going to be Claude? Is it going to be X? Is it going to be Gemini from Google? There's the first big thing that people get tripped up on is when are we going to choose? Once they make a choice, you know, how much adoption are they going to get? Because the real thought leaders in every business are already playing with these tools and they're developing their own habits and preferences and trends. And then the enterprise comes along and says, no, you have to use this stuff over here. So this is really a turbulent, wild, wild west environment that we're in, with the pace of change being extremely high. And for me, I think that's the number one challenge that businesses are facing with AI adoption and why we're seeing a high failure rate. But the failure rate is also because things are not well defined and not well measured.
Yeah, really, really well articulate. We're going to talk about a few of the things you said, but I do want to throw out a concern I have, speaking about the 90s and early 2000s for who are old enough to remember this, Chip, the fiber and telco build out of, you know, that era. You know, we still have fiber that's still dormant in the ground. And when you look at the market caps of Lucent and Nortel and Global Crossing, who were the
With the
NVIDIA,
giants, the
who were
titans.
the NVIDIAs of the day,
Yeah.
literally. Biggest market cap, I think, was Lucent at one point, right? So, and is there, do you look at that and go, you know, they say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. There are these massive infrastructure build outs going, data center build outs, et cetera. And, you know, could we find ourselves 10 years from now with very different winners in this game? Maybe it's not an NVIDIA as an example. Maybe it's somebody completely different. And, you know, NVIDIA is a $2 stock. Again, I'm just using this. Don't, for those of you that own NVIDIA.
Yeah, don't anybody go invest on the following discussion.
Not investment advice. It was just more observational that the biggest market cap players at that time, Chip, are pretty much all out of business or, you know, were spun out and that was the most important thing at that time.
I mean, you make a great analogy using NVIDIA and Lucent for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is Lucent, by the way, people may not know, was founded very close to where I live. It's an Allentown, Pennsylvania company that spun out of Bell Labs in Allentown. They built their big, well, everyone around here calls it the Emerald Palace. They built this building, you know, this green building with green glass that was gorgeous. And, you know, within 10 years, they were absorbed into other companies, which all of which eventually have been absorbed up into Intel. And look who has been one of the poorest performers in the silicon sector compared to NVIDIA, and it's Intel. So, you know, you hit the nail on the head. Um, yes, I would say your prediction is correct that in 10 years it's going to be a very different landscape of the winners and losers. We're already seeing shifts that indicate that this massive infrastructure build out that's underway and is likely to going to continue just upon momentum, for, you know, at least the next 36 to 60 months. On the mega data centers that are being built for training. We're already seeing shifts, or I'm reading articles that are demonstrating shifts that LLMs may not be the real future, of AI and its productive application in across all domains, not just the knowledge worker workplace, but robotics and everything else. But rather, it's actually small LLMs, SLMs that are capable of running on anything from a laptop to an iPhone to, you know, a relatively low memory, comparatively low CPU robot bouncing around that's plowing your field or, you know, taking out your trash or doing whatever. I mean, robotics and computational AI coming together is definitely the future of where this goes. And the LLM model isn't necessarily well suited to that. So it's way too early to predict who those winners and losers are. But I'm already seeing, at least in what I read, shifts that indicate that massive data centers crunching huge LLM, trying to seek artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence may not be the winners in the future.
We just saw last night with NVIDIA's earnings, Chip, we saw a rate of change slowdown, which, you know, you know, granted the stock didn't really get hit because Wall Street's a whole nother thing that we don't need to talk about. But it's just interesting because, you know, if we are on this incredible ramp, how we're already seeing rate of change slow down, that's interesting. Okay. So some of the things you mentioned, Chip, which was, and Liron mentioned, this whole thing of, you know, why they're failing, and this is kind of what you're talking about, well-defined, you know, types of things. But you know, if you talk about these older technologies, Liron, you were saying about risk and healthcare, you know, those are typically laggards in risk adverse systems and things like that. So they were talking about the integration complexity, right, into those systems is one of the big reasons for the quote unquote miss or the lack of success. Some other things. This one I'd love for your feedback, Liron and or Chip, because the quote here is, the core barrier to scaling is not infrastructure, regulation, or talent. It's learning. Most Gen AI systems don't retain feedback, adapt to context, or improve over time. Can you speak to what you think they mean by that, Liron? And, you know, and they go on to talk about real quick here, as I'd love your thoughts, that they don't see any reduction in headcount, this concern, oh, we're going to start laying off tons of people. But the one area they did find measurable savings is in business process outsourcing spending, services, outsourced services. So I needed somebody smarter than myself to kind of make heads and tails of this, hence the question to you, Liron.
Well, before Liron jumps in on this, I'll make a general comment, and I think Liron can make some very, very specific comments. The first general comment I'd make is that some of the conclusions in this article are already out of date. I mean, you know, the researchers produced this many months ago based on where LLMs were many months ago, and retraining memory and context is already a very different thing than it used to be. You know, the tools that I was using in April, May, and June, you know, the two primary ones that I still use personally. Back then, they couldn't remember anything from one session to the next, and now I've got a library of prompts and results and outputs that are saved automatically for me, and I can go back and stitch them together anytime I want just by asking. So,
Okay.
you know, that whole notion has changed, but that's not context. So, you know, the context and the context window is something I know Liron is very passionate about, and you know, he has taught himself, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for this. You know, as sort of an independent researcher, and is teaching the SaaS Alerts engineering team how to leverage and maximize the capabilities of LLMs as they stand today. And he made the comment earlier that context is the most important thing, and I think he's right about that. So we'll let him extend the comments from there.
Like I think that history repeats itself quite a bit, and that's one of the things that we talk about. And this reminds me a lot of the early computer days. And it wasn't until Wozniak and Steve Jobs came around and figured out, hey, like let's plug in a typewriter into this thing. And I don't know if I have my history exactly right with like who did what here, but eventually at some point somebody plugged a typewriter into the computer, and then they plugged it into a screen, and they're like, here it is, right? So in my opinion, the reason that it's not working right now is because that's what the innovators are doing now, trying to figure out how to take this technology and actually turn it into something useful. And we're seeing that with our dev team, where we're looking at things, and at the end of it, people are like, how am I supposed to use this? Like, what do I actually do with this? So and if you look at the technology, like you need your beachhead, you need your Normandy. So what are we going to do? In our case, tomorrow, we're going to evaluate using agents to write tests in our code as our beachhead for the very thing we do. And it's like, oh, just you do code completions. Code completions are good, but code completions allow you to go 15% faster. What we want to do is go 10 to 20 times faster. And as far as my opinion as to why these things don't work is in large corporations, we kind of do things that we've always done them. The incentive structure isn't always there to push innovation. And in many cases, those that innovate are sometimes viewed as pariahs. So you put yourself out there and you take a risk in like a startup sort of mentality, which is our DNA, you may very well fail. But in the startup world, we fall down, we get back up, and we do it again and again and again. But in big corporate, that's not necessarily the culture. So I think you need people to experiment, you need people to fail, and they have to share those things with other people. And it has to be this kind of collective thing because what we're trying to move to in marketing speak is the dominant design. If we think about what a computer is today, a computer is actually a whole bunch of different technologies tied into one. The monitor was its own technology, the mouse, its own technology, RAM, CPU, hard disk, all these different technologies had to be assembled today and are now defined by one word that we refer to as a computer. And I think that's where, like, that's the transformation that's taken place with AI now. And what we're building isn't the iPhone. We're not there yet. What we're trying to build is your 1991 computer that had 4 megahertz CPU and like a 6 megabyte hard drive. That's where we're going to right now.
That's really cool. Leron, I think you should do a session that write a boom on this. Main stage, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. And ask me right in front of 45 people. Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
The problem Leron's going to have with that, Andrew, is that to do a main stage session or write a broom and take up, let's say, 40 minutes or an hour's worth of time, he's got to do a ton of prep to get that done. And by the time he's done doing his prep, most of what he's prepped is going to be irrelevant for his presentation. And I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but not entirely. I mean,
Yeah.
look, we used to think that our world, right, the cybersecurity world, the kind of research that Ben has traditionally been doing for us. And by the way, Ben is no slouch in his own right when it comes to AI and particularly automation tools. He's extremely advanced. Um, the pace of change that we're dealing with on the artificial intelligence, machine learning, LLM, engineering tool side is, Leron, do you think I'm exaggerating to say it's 10x what it is in sort of the general cybersecurity space? I
No,
mean, I feel like that's a realistic statement.
I completely agree with you. I would measure it in 1 month in AI time is equivalent to a year in real time. I was talking to my brother who was very deep into this 6 months ago. What he was doing feels like it was years and years ago. And in my own, in the past month, I've switched from Cursor to Windsurf to VS Code and back and forth. And if you guys know anything about developers, we're typically married to our IDE, but because the technology is moving so quick, we're just changing back and forth, and you need that flexibility and adaptability. I agree 100%, Chip.
And in honor of Caddyshack, I just want to say that Ben's a tremendous slouch. Don't sell yourself short, Ben.
You got to deliver that line like Chevy Chase did. You really got to.
That was such a classic line. But this is what they were talking about, by the way, in again, however, what is it, a month or so old now, Chip, this article, I forget exactly the date, but this, not article, this research that was done that came out from MIT. But what was really interesting, they said this was kind of the eye opener, is that it's not that LLMs and AI aren't being used. It's just that the corporate AI and LLMs aren't being used, and and the employees are using them. They're just using their own and using them multiple times every day to do their work more efficiently.
Yeah. This is kind of the comment I made earlier that people who are self-motivated and are learning these tools of their own are way out ahead of their corporate structure and their organizations. Formerly, they've created their own subscriptions to the tools that they like, and they are far less likely to just adopt whatever the enterprise decides is going to be the enterprise tool. There is a danger here which I think we can talk about in the context of cybersecurity in our own businesses. You know, all of you guys are running your own MSPs. You probably have employees that are doing their own thing. And one thing that's important to consider is the privacy side of this. We touched on this, I think, several weeks ago, Andrew, that, you know, in the LLM world, it's just like Gmail. There's free Gmail, which sells your everything to everybody, and there's paid Google Workspace, which at least purports not to. So advice piece number one is once you settle on something you're going to use and you're beyond free trial, definitely pay for it. And at least review the licensing terms to make sure that they are claiming that they offer protections. But number two, I think companies need to develop guidelines around this that are very specific um, with respect to, sure, if you're using your own, LLMs, AI tools, code generation, marketing, whatever it is that you're doing, and you've developed a work pattern and it's something that you're paying for yourself, go with God. But don't ever log into that with your corporate credentials. Don't ever put our company name into one of your prompts. Don't ever share anything that isn't shared with the corporate approved tool stack. I mean, I think there does have to be a boundary line between the two. I know for myself, I have my own personal set of tools. They're not Kaseya tools, and I never cross that line with what Kaseya has officially approved. I think Liron is in the same boat. Anybody that is really digging in hard to the tool sets that are out there, you can't enterprises cannot move quickly enough. Even a 10-person MSP, with a really progressive leader at the top. Some of you, that are on this call, I'm talking to you guys, or a 30-person MSP. Even you can't move your policies and your legal reviews as fast as your team members are going to want to use. So I would encourage you to encourage them, just explain very clearly where the boundaries are on how you share information.
Which is a great segue into the slide, Chip. This is the issue: is governance and shadow AI is, where we're gonna find ourselves, or we do find ourselves. And the Verizon report found this a year ago. That data is already a year old, but even in, they were finding the irony, and I've said it on this, our session here multiple times, of that. The irony is that legal and HR departments led all departments in this area, which is kind of frightening, but it is what it is. This is what the survey found, that it's not for a lack of things being investigated, as I'm sure you guys all, could say and put in chat, that your clients say, oh, what do you know about, should we look at? I would be hard pressed to say that your customers and prospects aren't talking about or thinking about, or it's the fact that when the rubber hits the road, this is what they're showing. And Chip, to your point, is if you dug into this, you'd probably find, like most things, not a well-defined scope and outcomes, and possibly maturity, operational maturity in the organization to even do it, right? That doesn't get evaluated often. So
Yeah, I agree. I'm also very hopeful that it's going to move fast. And I'll go back to the Excel analogy. When Excel was first being used in the workplace, people were, getting templates of how to set up a P&L in Excel or a general ledger or whatever else. And, your average person would grab that template from somewhere and they would never move beyond it. I mean, even still, I think the comment holds that, you know, 90% of the people who use a tool like Excel or BI are only ever going to use 10% of its capability. And even at that, they're more productive. We're just way, way earlier in that curve with AI tool usage and designed and dedicated projects than we are today with the traditional business knowledge worker tools. It'll get there.
I was more of a Lotus 1-2-3 guy, but it's okay. We can go with Excel. Chip.
Yep. Well, I wasn't going to go back that far, Andrew.
Do you know my first job out of college was installing OS2 PC payrolls for ADP?
Oh, wow. OS2. How many
Wait.
people in this call remember OS2? Ben?
It was supposed to, and there was a big bet, right, Ben? Were you there? where IBM was going to quote unquote disrupt Microsoft. And
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, Leron, you sent me this article. I'll close us out with this. I thought it was interesting where, we're talking about how these AI initiatives are on the margin failing in corporations, yet not in the threat actor corporations. They're quote unquote, they're doing quite well with them, as this article with Anthropic points out, using them to, the one that I thought was really interesting, Leron, is their pivot away from ransomware on data exfil to using these agentic tools to just exfil data. I thought that was interesting.
To me, the most interesting thing is you would have these hacker groups where you have specialists, right? You have the social engineers. They go bribe people, they get the phishing thing, and then you have the people that investigate once they infiltrate. But the same way that we talk about multipliers, 20 to 30x productivity, one person was able to build agents to basically cover the entire threat
All the
spectrum
roles.
and do everything, including like, hey, like I'm too lazy to look at this data to figure out what's sensitive. Tell me what the sensitive data is. Great. Now construct the extortion email that I send these guys. And then, oh, by the way, how much should I extort them for? I don't know. I'm too lazy to figure it out. Have the agents do everything. That's the really interesting part for me here.
Yeah. It's interesting. I wonder what'll happen to the ecosystem, right? Because that's a big part of the organized crime syndicate here, Leron, is
They're going to innovate, is what that's going to happen, Andrew.
yeah.
Well,
No, I agree. Go, Chip.
The kicker is they have first mover advantage now because they don't have all the ethical, moral, legal, business obligations that we have to try and sort out on the white hat side of this. They're just like, I don't care. I don't need to worry about privacy policies and data sharing. And, I'm here to specifically break that down. So they don't have any of the barriers that industry, even the cybersecurity industry has to deal with at the moment. So they just have less bureaucracy. They always have, but at this particular moment in the AI cybersecurity wars, they've got a big advantage over the rest of us.
Yeah, very true. All right. Well, great call. I really appreciate everybody's insight. Thanks everybody for joining us as always on Thursday, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Hopefully we will have a special guest if Amanda can get Jason, is it, to join us. And with that, wishing you all a fantastic day ahead. Take care, everybody.
Bye, Ron.
Have a great week, everyone.
Oh.